People often claim women's instincts never steer them wrong, though there were moments I longed for mine to be mistaken. I'm Catherine, 46, and I've spent 23 years married to Marcus. That evening, while folding clothes in the kitchen, the fading sunlight slipped in through the window. Even though the house was large, it felt hollow, stripped of the noise and warmth it once held. I could hear the faint sound of the neighbor's TV, and beyond the glass, autumn leaves floated down in slow spirals. Marcus was out again, training, as he called it. At first he went twice a week, then 3 times, and within half a year it became nearly every day. "I need to get in shape, Catherine," he'd explained, patting the slightest hint of belly. "I'm not getting any younger." At 48, he remained striking. Broad shoulders, gray, threaded through his dark hair, still carrying the charm that had first caught me in college. Yet something was off. He rushed to shower the instant he returned, wore a new cologne that lingered in his car, and clutched his gym bag like it contained classified files, always hauling it directly to the bedroom before I could offer to launder his things. Each detail on its own could be dismissed, but together they drew a picture I could no longer ignore. That night, suspicion overcame restraint. I slid open the zipper of the black leather bag left by the door. Inside were workout clothes that smelled freshly washed, energy bars still sealed, and beneath them, hidden in a towel, a pack of condoms and a bottle of Viagra. My fingers shook as I lifted them, not with fury that would arrive after, but with the crushing certainty of truth, a pain that started deep in my gut and radiated outward until even the tips of my fingers ached. Intimacy had been absent for 4 months, and Marcus blamed it on work stress and exhaustion from his new workout regime. I accepted those explanations and even felt a twinge of guilt for wanting more closeness between us. He insisted fatigue was the cause, and I let his reasoning stand, convincing myself I had no right to demand more when he sounded so sincere about being worn out. Only then did it click why our bedroom had become merely a place to sleep. I carefully returned the items to their original positions, wrapped them exactly as I'd found them, and zipped the bag closed before sitting at the kitchen table to think. My eyes fixed on the ceramic fruit bowl his mother had given us for our 10th anniversary as I began to make a plan, each detail of the morning replaying and sharpening into purpose. Over the following 2 weeks, I turned into an unpaid sleuth, collecting small proofs until they pooled into something undeniable. Receipts from Romano's, our special occasion restaurant, showed dinners for 2 on nights he'd claimed gym time, totaling $127.50 for meals I never tasted. His car carried a floral, youthful perfume unlike the mature scents I wore. A tissue under the passenger seat bore lipstick 3 shades brighter than anything in my makeup bag, and phone calls that cut off the moment I entered a room were always dismissed with, "Just work stuff." His coworkers didn't usually bring that kind of smile to his face, yet the credit card bills told a consistent story. Charges at lingerie shops, florists, and the Meridian Hotel on 3 separate nights. $89 for roses I never received. $150 for silk that never touched me. $220 for hotel rooms where I did not sleep. The cruelty lay in how ordinary the rest of our life remained. Marcus still kissed my forehead, asked about my day over dinner, and sat next to me while we watched television, an expert at separating betrayal into tidy compartments. I learned to compartmentalize as well. I bought a small syringe at the pharmacy, telling the clerk it was for my diabetic cat, then purchased the hottest chili peppers I could find at the farmer's market and a bottle of pure capsaicin oil from the health food store. While Marcus attended another supposed training session, I extracted the fiery liquid and readied my weapon. The injection demanded absolute patience. Every condom had to be pierced in just the right place, not at the tip where the damage could be spotted, but along the side where the needle mark would vanish into the material. I filled each one with only a trace of the chili extract, enough to coat the inside while leaving its appearance untouched. When the work was done, I resealed the wrappers with a precision that could have impressed a surgeon, and I couldn't ignore the irony. After 23 years of marriage, I had finally learned how to be deceitful. 2 days later, Marcus mentioned another training session. "Big workout tonight," he said, brushing his lips against my cheek with the same mouth that had likely kissed someone else earlier that day. "Don't wait up." I watched him leave with his gym bag and then settled into the long wait. I brewed tea, tried to read, forced myself into small distractions, but dread and anticipation twisted together in my chest until they became indistinguishable. At 9:47 p.m., my phone rang. Marcus's name glowed on the screen. His voice when I answered was strained and panicked. "Catherine, there's been an accident. I'm at Mercy General Hospital." My questions tumbled out. "What happened? Are you hurt?" But his replies were broken. It's hard to explain. Can you come, please?" The drive felt unreal. A part of me feared he was truly injured, but another part already knew what had happened and carried a grim satisfaction. Still, the dominant feeling was a hollow numbness. 23 years of marriage were unraveling in an emergency room, and I had been the one to set it in motion. Inside Mercy General, fluorescent lights washed every face into a sickly pallor, and the air reeked of disinfectant and desperation. A weary receptionist pointed me toward room 237, and as I walked down the corridor, my pulse thundered in my ears. Just before I reached the door, a voice carried out from inside, not Marcus's, but one I knew instantly. "The burning won't stop," the woman was saying, and my heart froze. "We tried ice. We tried milk. Nothing helps." The voice was unmistakable, one I had heard around the table at birthdays, at Christmas mornings, during family dinners. It belonged to the woman who had called me Mom for 3 years, Jennifer, my son's wife. I pushed open the door, and the scene waiting for me was at once exactly what I had feared, and something I could never have braced myself for. Marcus lay on one hospital bed, his face flushed, sweat dripping, a damp towel pressed against his lap. Across from him sat Jennifer, my daughter-in-law, the mother of my 2 grandchildren, wearing a hospital gown with tears streaking down her cheeks. Both of them looked up as I entered. Marcus's face crumpled under the weight of shame, while Jennifer's eyes widened in raw panic. "Catherine, I can explain," Marcus began. "No," I answered quietly, reaching into my purse. "I don't think you can." The papers I had signed that very afternoon unfolded with a sharp crackle. They had been ready for 2 weeks, waiting for this moment, and now the time had come. The silence was immense, swallowing even the endless background noises of the hospital, machines beeping, voices in distant corridors, the squeak of wheelchair wheels against linoleum. "Mrs. Williams?" a voice interrupted from the doorway. I turned to see Dr. Sarah Chen, my book club friend, standing there in scrubs with a clipboard balanced against her arm. Her eyes shifted from Marcus to Jennifer to me, and I saw the realization spread across her face. "Sarah called me," I said into the thick quiet. "She thought I should know my husband was here. She didn't mention you'd brought company." And for the first time since I'd arrived, Jennifer's voice broke through her tears. "Catherine, please, you have to understand." "I understand perfectly," I replied, placing the divorce papers on the rolling table between Marcus's bed and the single chair. "I understand my husband has been lying to me for months. I understand my daughter-in-law has betrayed not only her own marriage but our entire family. And I understand the 2 of you are in this hospital because of choices you made yourselves." Marcus shifted, struggling to sit upright. "The burning? Something's wrong with the condoms. They must have been contaminated or—" "Nothing was contaminated," I said softly. "Everything worked exactly as intended." The words struck them like blows. Jennifer let out a sharp gasp while Marcus stared at me, caught between awe and horror. "You did this," Jennifer whispered. "I protected myself," I answered. "You both decided to wound the people who cared for you. I decided there had to be consequences." From the doorway, Dr. Chen cleared her throat. "I'll give you some privacy. The burning should subside in a few hours with the treatment we've given you. You'll both be fine, physically." When Dr. Chen stepped out, I dragged the lone visitor's chair closer to Marcus's bed and sat down. My hands didn't shake. My voice was steady. For the first time in months, I felt an absolute sense of control. 23 years, I said to Marcus. I gave you 23 years of loyalty, of love, of raising your children, keeping your home, supporting your career, and this is how you repay me? Catherine, please. I'm not finished. The edge in my tone startled even me. Turning to Jennifer, I continued, "And you called me Mom. You sat at my table every Sunday for 3 years. You let me watch your children while you were doing this. You hugged me at Christmas while you were helping to destroy my marriage." Jennifer broke into sobs. "I never meant for it to happen. We didn't plan it." "Didn't plan it?" I cut her off. "You've been meeting at the Meridian Hotel for 2 months. You've had 6 dinners at Romano's. Marcus bought you lingerie from Vivian's boutique. Which part of that wasn't planned?" The details struck them like open-handed slaps. I watched their faces shift as the depth of my knowledge sank in, as they realized how long I'd been watching and recording every move of their betrayal. "How long have you known?" Marcus asked finally. "Long enough to make decisions about my future," I said, sliding the divorce papers into his hands. "Decisions that don't include either of you. This marriage is over. I've already spoken with an attorney, and the house is in my name, part of the inheritance I received from my parents. The retirement accounts will be divided under state law, and you can keep your gym membership." Marcus stared at the documents as though they were written in a language he couldn't decipher. "Catherine, we can work through this. Counseling. Therapy. Some things can't be worked through, Marcus. Some betrayals are too complete." I rose to my feet and looked directly at both of them. "In 15 minutes, I'm going to call Michael and tell him his wife is here. I'll let you decide how much of the truth he needs to know, but he's going to know something. And tomorrow morning, I'm calling a locksmith." Jennifer's quiet sobs swelled into desperate wails. "Please, Catherine, think about the children. Think about the family." Her voice broke, hands trembling against the thin fabric of the hospital gown. But I didn't flinch. "I am thinking about the family. I'm thinking about how you destroyed it." With those words, I turned and left. The walk from room 237 to the hospital lobby stretched before me like a mile, every step echoing with finality. Each step echoed along the sterile corridor, the sound blending with the distant rhythm of machines and the low murmur of night shift nurses. In the family waiting area, I found a quiet corner and dialed my son, Michael. The phone rang 4 times before his tired voice came through. "Mom, it's almost 11. Is everything okay?" "Michael, I need you to come to Mercy General Hospital, room 237. "What? Are you hurt? Is Dad—" "We're all fine physically, but there's something you need to see." "Mom, you're scaring me. What's going on?" I shut my eyes, searching for words that shouldn't exist. How does a mother tell her child that his wife has been unfaithful? How do you explain that the man she betrayed him with was his own father? "Jennifer is here at the hospital," I said at last. She's here with your father. They were together when they both got hurt." Silence stretched so long that I wondered if the line had dropped. Finally, his voice came back, colder now. "Together? How?" "Together in a way that breaks marriages, Michael. I'm sorry. I'll be there in 20 minutes. The call ended. I sat in a hard plastic chair and let the chaos of the emergency room unfold around me. A teenager cradled a broken arm beside his worried parents. An older woman complained of chest pain to anyone who would listen. A young couple, bruised and shaken, clung to each other after a car accident. Everywhere around me were people facing real emergencies, and yet here I was, sitting in the middle of the ruin I had set in motion. Still, there was no regret, only a calm, settled clarity. 22 minutes later, the automatic doors of the hospital slid open and Michael strode inside. At 25, he carried the same sharp jawline and piercing eyes as his father, a mirror of Marcus in his youth, though the weight he bore on his face now was entirely his own. but where Marcus had mastered the art of concealing his emotions behind polished smiles, Michael carried his heart plainly on his face. In that moment, confusion, fury, and sorrow all battled in his expression. "Where are they?" he asked, and I guided him to room 237. Through the narrow window in the door, we saw Marcus and Jennifer. Neither spoke. Each sat on their own bed, eyes fixed on opposite walls, the heaviness of what they'd done pressing down like a suffocating weight. Michael pushed the door open without knocking. "Jen?" His voice was little more than a whisper. Jennifer lifted her head, and the look that crossed her face at the sight of her husband was the first true emotion I had seen from her all night: raw, overwhelming guilt. "Michael, she began, but he cut her off. "Is it true?" His eyes flicked from his wife to his father, searching, demanding. "Are you two—" Their silence was an answer that spoke louder than words. Michael's fists curled tight at his sides. "How long?" he demanded. "Son," Marcus began, but Michael's voice rose, sharp and insistent. "How long?" At last, Jennifer whispered the truth. 4 months. Michael nodded slowly, as though the words needed time to sink in, then swung his gaze to his father. "You son of a bitch!" Marcus flinched. "Michael, please, let me explain." "Explain what?" Michael's voice rose with every question. "How you've been sleeping with my wife. How you've been lying to Mom. How you've been lying to me." Each accusation landed heavier than the last. "Mr. Williams." Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway, her tone clipped. "I need to ask you to keep your voices down. This is a hospital." "Sorry," Michael muttered without breaking eye contact with Marcus. "I'm just trying to understand how my dad became the kind of man who destroys his own family." He shifted his gaze to Jennifer. "And you sat at Mom's table last Sunday. You helped Emma make Mother's Day cards for her grandmother. You looked her in the eye and smiled while you were doing this." Jennifer was crying again, but there was no trace of performance this time, only the unvarnished tears of someone who had lost everything and was just beginning to grasp the size of their mistake. "Where are the kids?" Michael asked. "At your mom's," Jennifer managed between sobs. "Your mother's watching them tonight." Michael gave a short, bitter laugh. "Perfect. So my kids are with the one decent person in this whole mess, while their parents are here getting treated for— What exactly? What happened to you two?" I stepped forward. "That's my fault." All 3 of them looked at me. I doctored the condoms with chili oil. I've known about their affair for weeks. Tonight was my way of making sure there were consequences. Michael stared at me for a long moment, then started laughing. Not happy laughter. The kind of desperate laughter that comes when the situation is so absurd that humor is the only alternative to screaming. "You set them up? I protected myself, and I protected you, though you don't know it yet. How did you protect me?" I reached into my purse and pulled out a manila envelope. Private investigator's report. Photos, credit card records, hotel receipts, everything you'll need for your divorce attorney. 6 weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. Marcus had moved out the day after the hospital incident. He'd tried calling several times, leaving voicemails that ranged from apologetic to angry to desperate. I'd listened to the first few, then blocked his number. The settlement was fair, even generous on my part. I kept the house, my parents' wedding gift to us 23 years ago, and half of our retirement accounts. Marcus kept his pension and his freedom. It seemed like a fair exchange. Jennifer and Michael's divorce, however, turned far uglier. She'd retained a costly attorney who argued her affair was the result of postpartum depression and temporary insanity. But Michael's lawyer, backed by the evidence I had provided, easily showed that 4 months of intentional deceit could never be dismissed as temporary. In the end, custody of Emma and David went primarily to Michael, with Jennifer granted weekends and holidays. She returned to her parents' home across town and took work at a dental office. Through mutual friends, I learned she had begun therapy, struggling to understand why she'd made choices that cut so deep. I felt no sense of victory in her unraveling, nor in Marcus's quiet exile to a small downtown apartment. My sense of satisfaction was different, quieter, deeply personal. It was the peace of a woman who had chosen not to be a victim. "All done," my attorney said, sliding the final documents across his polished mahogany desk. "You're officially Catherine Williams again." For practical reasons, bank accounts, credit cards, the familiarity of my grandchildren, I decided to keep Marcus's last name, but legally, I was free. Outside the office, autumn had slipped into early winter, the trees stripped bare, their branches clawing upward toward a pale gray December sky. I walked to my car at an unhurried pace, breathing the cold air deep into my chest. As I reached for my keys, my phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "Dinner tonight? Kids want to see Grandma." I smiled at the message and typed back, "I'll cook 6 p.m. Preparing a meal for my son and grandchildren carried a new weight now. Not obligation, not a performance of worth, but a gift freely chosen for people I loved. That distinction mattered more than I could explain. At home, I set about making Emma's favorite chicken parmesan and David's beloved garlic bread. The kitchen filled with the scent of family and comfort, yet for the first time in months, the space didn't feel lonely. While the chicken baked, I uncorked a bottle of good wine, no longer the cheap kind I used to buy when I felt undeserving of better. I poured a glass and lingered at the kitchen window, looking out at the garden I'd planted last spring. The rose bushes stood dormant now, but I knew they'd bloom again come spring. Some things survived winter. Some things emerged stronger after seasons of darkness. When Michael arrived with the children, Emma sprinted into my arms, her 5-year-old voice bright. "Grandma!" Daddy said Mommy and Grandpa went away. "Are they coming back for Christmas?" I bent to her level and gazed into eyes that mirrored her father's. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that change everything, sweetheart. But the people who truly love you will always be here. Will you read me a story after dinner?" "I'd love to." At the table, David, 7 years old and more direct, posed questions that cut deeper. "Dad says Mommy hurt you. Is that why she can't live with us anymore?" Michael shifted, ready to intervene, but I raised a hand to stop him. "The kids deserve the truth, though softened to fit their age. Your mom made decisions that caused pain for the whole family," I explained carefully. "Sometimes when people hurt one another deeply, they can't keep living together. But that doesn't mean she doesn't care for you, and it doesn't mean you did something wrong." "Did Grandpa make mistakes too?" "Yes, he did." "Are you sad?" Emma asked. I thought for a moment. I was very sad, but now I mostly feel relieved. After the meal, while the children played in the living room, Michael joined me in the kitchen to wash dishes. "How are you really, Mom?" he asked. "Better than I expected. Not as good as I hoped, but I'm managing." He shook his head. "I keep thinking I should have noticed, that I should have realized what was going on." "Michael, look at me," I said firmly, until he met my gaze. "This isn't on you. Your wife and your father made choices that shattered your family. You were simply being a devoted husband and son. There's nothing shameful about that. Are you mad at me for not protecting you?" The question nearly broke my heart. "Oh, sweetheart," I answered gently, "it isn't your job to protect me. I protect myself. That's the lesson I took from all this, that I'm stronger than I ever realized." That evening, after Michael and the kids went home, I filled the tub with hot water and allowed my mind to drift toward what lay ahead. For the first time in 23 years, the horizon was wide open. I could go wherever I pleased, do anything I wanted, and shape myself into whoever I chose to be. The woman who had unzipped that bag 6 weeks earlier had been terrified of loneliness. The woman sitting in that bathtub had begun to see solitude as freedom. By March, I had already carved out new habits and rhythms. I began taking morning walks through the neighborhood, noticing details I had overlooked for years. the way Mrs. Henderson's daffodils always bloomed ahead of everyone else's, the ornate ironwork decorating the old Victorian homes, even the new coffee shop that had opened just 2 blocks away while I'd been consumed with being a wife. I finally joined the book club at the library, something I had long wanted to do but never managed because my evenings had been dictated by Marcus's schedule. I enrolled in a pottery class at the community college and started volunteering with a children's literacy program, reading aloud to kindergartners who thought I was magical simply because I could bring stories to life. The house itself felt transformed, lighter somehow, even though it was emptier. I redecorated the master bedroom, trading out Marcus's heavy burgundy curtains for sheer white linen that allowed the sunlight to pour in. I removed the television completely, reclaiming the room as a sanctuary for rest and reading rather than distraction. Every Sunday, Michael came by with the children, and on Wednesdays, Jennifer handled school pickup. We had established a cooperative rhythm that centered Emma and David's well-being. Jennifer and I rarely spoke, but when we did, the words were polite. I no longer felt the urge to punish her. Life had already delivered consequences for the choices she made. Marcus had made several attempts to contact me through mutual friends, hoping to apologize, to explain, to patch over what had been broken. I had no interest in either his regrets or his justifications. Some betrayals run too deep to allow forgiveness, and I no longer needed his contrition or his perspective to move forward. One Wednesday in early April, as I stepped out of the pottery studio with my hands still faintly marked by clay, I collided with someone outside the coffee shop. "I'm so sorry," I said quickly, looking up at a man about my age with gentle eyes and silver threading through his hair. I wasn't watching where I was going. "No harm done. Beautiful evening for a walk," he replied. He was right. The air was warm without heaviness, carrying the scent of blooming cherry blossoms mixed with the rich aroma of coffee drifting from the shop behind us. "Are you Catherine Williams from the book club?" he asked. "I'm David Martinez. I've been thinking about joining, but wasn't sure if it might be intimidating since I mostly read military history." I laughed. We just finished debating whether Jane Austen was a hidden feminist or simply a gifted storyteller. "I think you'd fit in perfectly. Would you like to get coffee and tell me more about it? I promise not to bore you with endless Civil War tales." I paused, not out of reluctance, but because it was still new to realize that my time belonged to me again. His smile was warm, disarming, and I felt myself open to the possibility. I'd like that. Over coffee that stretched into dinner at a small Italian restaurant down the block, I found out that David had been a high school principal before retiring. He was a widower, his wife having passed from cancer a year and a half earlier after 41 years of marriage, and he was still figuring out how to live on his own. "It's strange," he said, rotating the wine in his glass. "I was married so long I forgot who I was as just David, not David and Maria. Sometimes I still set 2 places at the table or buy her favorite yogurt without even thinking about it." I told him I understood. "I'm finding I like having the entire bed to myself," I said, "and I can read until 2 in the morning if I want, without anyone grumbling about the light." "What happened to your marriage, if you don't mind me asking?" he ventured. By now, I had told the story enough times, to lawyers, therapists, book club friends, that I could recite it without a flicker of pain. My husband had an affair with my daughter-in-law. I caught them, divorced him, and realized I'd rather be alone than with someone who didn't respect me. David winced. "That's brutal. I'm sorry." "Don't be," I said. "It was the best thing that could have happened to me." "How do you figure?" "Because it forced me to learn who I was without him. And it turns out I like her quite a lot." We kept talking until the staff began stacking chairs on tables around us, the restaurant winding down for the night while our conversation still lingered. David walked me to my car, and we agreed to go to the next book club meeting together. As I drove back through the quiet streets of my neighborhood, I felt a sensation that had been absent for years. Genuine anticipation about what the next day might hold. In May, a letter arrived from Marcus. It wasn't a text or an email, but a handwritten note on the expensive stationery I recognized from the drawer where he kept paper for important correspondence. I nearly threw it out without opening it, but my curiosity won out. "Catherine, I know you don't want to hear from me, and I understand why. What I did was unforgivable, and I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I'm writing because there are things I should have told you months ago. You were the best wife a man could ask for. You were loyal, generous, intelligent, and beautiful. You supported my dreams, raised our children, and turned our house into a home. The affair had nothing to do with anything you lacked. It had everything to do with what I lacked: character, integrity, and the wisdom to appreciate what I had. Jennifer means nothing to me. She never did. She was simply available and willing, and I was foolish enough to confuse excitement with happiness. I threw away 23 years of marriage for something that wasn't even real. I hear from Michael that you're doing well. I'm glad. You deserve happiness, and you deserve better than I ever gave you. I'm not the same man who betrayed you. I've been in therapy, trying to figure out how I turned into someone capable of that kind of cruelty. I realize working on myself doesn't erase the harm I caused, and I'm not asking you to give me another chance. I only want you to understand that I recognize exactly what I lost. I hope that one day you'll be able to remember the good years without anger. We did have good years, Catherine, at least 20 of them. I pray I haven't destroyed those memories for you. Marcus." I read his words twice before placing the letter on the kitchen table and making tea. Through the window, I could see the rose bushes outside in full bloom, their petals open wide in the afternoon sunlight. The letter seemed sincere. Marcus had always been able to express himself beautifully when he chose to, and the tone felt honest rather than manipulative. Even so, nothing about it changed the reality. However heartfelt, an apology couldn't erase betrayal. Understanding his reasons didn't mend the hurt. I folded the letter carefully and slipped it into the drawer with my important documents, not because I cherished it, but because it marked closure. Marcus had spoken what he needed to, and I had received it. Now we could both continue our lives without any lingering words left unsaid. That night, David and I went to see the community theater's staging of Our Town. During intermission, he leaned over and asked if I was enjoying myself. "It's making me think about time," I told him, "how often we waste it, waiting for life to start or relying on others to bring us happiness." "Are you happy now?" The bluntness of the question caught me off guard. "Yes," I answered, and realized I meant it. Not in the way I once imagined happiness would look at 46, but real nonetheless. "What's changed?" he asked. "I'm living for myself instead of revolving around someone else. I make choices based on what I want, not on what's expected. And I finally understand the difference between being alone and being lonely." "And which are you?" "Alone, and I like it." David smiled. "Good. That makes you far better company than someone who needs others just to feel whole." After the show, we strolled through downtown, talking about everything and nothing. Being with David felt easy. No hidden motives, no games, no manipulation. Just a good man who enjoyed spending time with me and who made me laugh. When he walked me back to my door, I realized I was drawn to him. Not with the desperate, consuming intensity that had defined my early years with Marcus, but with the calm interest of a woman who understood her own value. "Would you like to come in for coffee?" I asked. "I'd love to, but I think I'll say goodnight instead." I arched a brow. Afraid of my coffee? Afraid of rushing something that might be worth taking slowly? I liked that answer. I liked it a lot. September marked my 47th birthday as well as a year since I had uncovered Marcus's affair. The balance of those dates wasn't lost on me. What had been the darkest day the year before had now turned into a celebration of my freedom. Michael organized a party in my backyard, inviting my book club companions, classmates from pottery, and a few neighbors I'd grown closer to over the past year. David arrived with flowers, sunflowers because he said they reminded him of my smile, and a first edition of Pride and Prejudice, proof that he'd been listening when I once mentioned my love for Austen. Emma and little David, my grandson, not my David, stood on either side of me to help blow out the candles on the chocolate cake Michael had picked up from the downtown bakery. As I closed my eyes to make a wish, I realized I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I already had everything I wanted. After the last guest left and Michael took the kids home, David stayed behind to help tidy up. We moved through the kitchen quietly, working around each other with the comfortable rhythm of people who had already shared many evenings together. "Good party," he said as he dried the last of the wine glasses. "I never imagined I'd enjoy being the center of attention, but it was fun. You seem different tonight, lighter," he added. I thought about his comment. A year ago today, I discovered my husband was cheating on me. I believed my life was over. And now? Now I think it was only beginning. David placed the dish towel on the counter and faced me directly. "Catherine, there's something I want to ask you." My heartbeat quickened. Over the 6 months we'd been seeing each other, David had been consistently patient and respectful. We'd shared meals, films, long walks, and deep talks, but he had never tried to push me further than I was ready to go. "What is it?" "I'm falling in love with you. Actually, I think I already have, and I want to know if there's any chance you feel the same." His words lingered in the air between us. A year earlier, if someone had told me I'd be standing in my kitchen hearing a kind, decent man declare his love for me, I would have thought they were out of their mind. Back then, I was still clinging to a marriage that had already died. "David, you don't have to answer now. I just wanted you to know how I feel." "I do feel the same way," I said softly, "but you need to understand something. I love you, but I don't need you. I'm not looking for someone to complete me, rescue me, or repair my life. I'm looking for someone to share the life I've already built." His smile lit up the room. "That's exactly the kind of love I want," he said. We kissed there in my kitchen, surrounded by the quiet proof of my new life, the pottery I'd crafted, the books I'd been reading, the flowers from my garden. It tasted like possibility and felt like finally coming home to myself. Later that night, after David had gone back to his own house, we were still taking things slowly after all. I sat on the back porch with a glass of wine and reflected on the strange arc of the past year. The woman who had found those condoms had been broken, furious, and terrified. She had felt like a victim of forces beyond her control. The woman sitting on that porch was none of those things. She was strong, independent, and truly happy. Marcus's betrayal, though he would never realize it, had been a gift. It forced me to discover who Catherine Williams was when she wasn't Marcus's wife, or Michael's mother, or anyone else's anything. And what I found was someone I genuinely liked being. My phone buzzed with a message from Michael. "Thanks for a great party, Mom. Dad called today." I typed back, "What did he want?" "To know if you were happy." I told him you were the happiest I'd ever seen you. I smiled and put the phone away. Let Marcus wonder what my happiness looked like. Let him picture what his absence had made possible. I had far better things to occupy my mind, like Tuesday's book club meeting, where we'd be discussing eat, pray, love, and I would finally have something meaningful to say about rediscovering yourself after loss. Or Thursday's pottery class, where I was at last learning to center clay on the wheel. Or David, who loved me not out of need, but because he truly enjoyed who I became when I was fully myself. Or my grandchildren who were watching and learning that adults can be resilient, that hardship can lead to something good, and that sometimes the greatest revenge is simply living well. Sitting there in the darkness of my backyard, surrounded by the roses I had planted and tended with my own hands, I understood that Marcus had been wrong in his letter. We hadn't shared 20 good years. We'd had 20 years in which I shrank to fit his needs, confusing duty with love and submission with partnership. This last year had been my first genuinely good one in decades, and tomorrow promised to be even better. Epilogue. 2 years later. The wedding was intimate, Only family and close friends gathered beneath the old oak tree that had shaded my backyard for 50 years. Emma scattered rose petals along a makeshift aisle, while my grandson David carried the rings on a small velvet cushion, his face full of solemn concentration. I wore a simple cream-colored dress I'd chosen purely because I loved it, not because it fulfilled anyone else's expectations. David looked striking in his navy suit, the silver in his hair glowing in the late afternoon light that filtered through the oak branches above us. Michael walked beside me down the aisle, not to hand me over, but to stand with me as I chose to start a new chapter. When he kissed my cheek before taking his seat in the front row, I caught the tears in his eyes. "You look beautiful, Mom," he whispered. "You look free." The ceremony itself was brief, no more than 15 minutes. We had written vows of our own, promising to love one another without losing who we were, to encourage each other's independence, and to create something new without pretending it could replace what we had each once lost. When the justice of the peace declared us husband and wife, David kissed me, gentle, steady, certain. In the audience, I noticed my book club friends dabbing at their eyes, my pottery instructor smiling with pride, and Mrs. Henderson from down the street snapping photos on her phone. Marcus and Jennifer were not there. Michael had wondered if he should invite his father, but I had spared him the decision. "This day is about moving forward," I told him. "Your father belongs to the past." The reception was a simple potluck, with long tables arranged beneath string lights we had strung between the trees. My friend Sarah from the book club brought her famous lasagna. David's daughter had driven up from Atlanta, bringing a homemade tiramisu for the reception. As the sun went down, the children dashed across the yard waving sparklers, their laughter weaving together with the talk of adults who had chosen to celebrate love rather than fear. Later that night, once the guests had gone and the kids were tucked into the guest room for their sleepover with Grandma and Grandpa David, we settled onto the porch swing he had put up the previous spring. "Any regrets?" David asked, his arm draped around my shoulders. "Only that I waited so long to figure out who I really was." "And who is that?" he asked. I gave the question real thought. "Someone who doesn't need to be needed. Someone who can love without losing herself. Someone who understands the difference between being good and being useful. I love all of those someones. Even when I'm stubborn and independent and refuse to let you open jars for me, especially then." We fell into an easy silence, watching the last light drain from the sky. In the distance, I could hear the fountain in my garden, the one I'd bought with my divorce settlement back when I was first teaching myself to spend money on things that brought me joy. "What are you thinking about?" David asked. "Marcus." I felt him stiffen slightly. Even after 2 years of marriage, my first husband's name was still a tender topic. "Not the way you think," I added quickly. I was thinking about how grateful I am to him. Grateful? He broke my heart so completely, I had no choice but to rebuild it stronger. He wrecked my life so thoroughly, I had to create a better one. He made it so obvious what I didn't want that, when I finally encountered what I truly desired, I could recognize it instantly. "So, are you suggesting I send him a thank you card?" David asked with a grin. I laughed. "Maybe both of us should." The reality was that Marcus hadn't crossed my mind in months. The last update I'd heard was that he was seeing a younger colleague from his office, someone closer to Jennifer's age than mine. I felt no sting of jealousy, no lingering anger, and no urge to wonder whether this new relationship would outlast his affair. Marcus belonged to a life I no longer lived. The woman who uncovered those condoms 3 years earlier had defined herself through the needs of others. The woman now resting on this porch swing had learned to be whole on her own and chose to share that wholeness with someone who valued it. "Can I tell you a secret?" I asked. "Always," David replied. "Sometimes I almost feel guilty about being this happy, like I should still be furious or resentful or broken." "And when you feel that way, what do you think?" that happiness isn't something you earn by enduring pain. It's something you choose when you decide you're worthy of it. David bent down and kissed the top of my head. Remind me to tell that to my daughter. She's been trapped in a miserable marriage for 5 years because she thinks walking away would mean failing. Maybe she just needs to stumble across her own set of condoms in a gym bag. Catherine Williams Martinez, are you implying my daughter's husband should cheat on her? What I'm saying is that sometimes we need an outside force to push us into making the changes we're too afraid to take alone. And if that push doesn't come, then we have to give it to ourselves. That evening, while we prepared for bed in the master bedroom, I had redesigned twice. First to erase Marcus's presence, and then to welcome David. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. The reflection showed a 49-year-old woman, with laugh lines etched around her eyes and strands of silver woven through her brown hair. She looked assured, content, and at ease in her own skin. She no longer resembled the wife Marcus Williams had known. She was exactly the woman David Martinez had fallen for. "What's making you smile?" David asked, stepping out of the bathroom in his pajamas. "I was just thinking that revenge really is best served cold." "Oh? And what form did your revenge take?" "Living well, choosing happiness, refusing to let his betrayal twist me into someone bitter or broken." "That isn't revenge, Catherine. That's wisdom." "Sometimes they're the same thing." Later, as I lay beside my husband in the bed I had chosen, in the home I had reclaimed, surrounded by the life I had rebuilt from the wreckage of my first marriage, I thought of the women who might one day read these words. Some would be uncovering their own hidden condoms in gym bags. Others would be spotting charges they never made on credit card bills, or hearing phone calls cut short the second they walked into the room. Some women may be sensing the gradual fading of respect and intimacy, the unmistakable sign of a marriage dying. To them, I would say this: you are far stronger than you realize. You are worthy of more than what you've been settling for. And sometimes, the event that feels like the worst blow ends up being the best turning point of your life. But you must be willing to rescue yourself. You must be willing to uncover who you are when you stop bending into the shape of who someone else wants you to be. You must be ready to choose yourself. The chili oil was only the start. The real act of revenge was becoming a woman who could never be undone again, not because she lost the ability to trust, but because she placed her trust in herself above all else. And Marcus, if you're out there reading this, thank you. You showed me that I could withstand anything. You proved that I carried more strength than I ever believed. You forced me to discover what I was made of. And the truth is, I am steel wrapped in silk, built on an unshakable core of self-respect. That's quite a gift, even if you never intended to give it.